we've talked about this a little bit on the show before, but this is a different article on the same topic from a slightly different angle. I want to hear your thoughts on it, Kira.
Yeah, basically right now, Palestinian leaders have announced a day of rage, which is what the Reuters report here says is a gritty, off-use call for resistance against Israel after learning about President Trump's Middle East plan, which President Trump released on Wednesday. Did we cover what his plan actually was on Wednesday? Okay.
Or at least bullet points.
Bullet points of it. Well, and and if you guys were not here to hear about what it was President Trump basically asserted as imminent, right? Is a two-state solution that is not actually all that two-statey, right? Doesn't really cast the Palestinian state much sovereignty at all. I'm just going to go through some examples of some of the things that President Trump put forward in this kind of phony peace deal. And you'll get to hear why Palestinian leaders are having a really hard time actually accepting this deal. So Trump's plan sets in motion a 4-year timeline with Palestinians having to agree to halt attacks by Islamist military group Hamas, which controls Gaza. Palestinians should set up governing institutions in order to establish their state, likely to be similar to what's going on right now. The Palestinian state would include stretches of land in the West Bank as well as the Gaza Strip on the Mediterranean coast and 2 expanses of the territory in Israel's southern Negev desert. Jerusalem would be Israel's undivided capital, which I know that there was a lot of contention around recently and in 2017 when Trump, so this is where my confusion, I feel like Trump unilaterally just asserts things and declares things, and somehow it's like rule of law. And I guess, Paul, this is where a lot of my confusion about Israel and Palestine comes in, is what the fuck are we doing in there, and how in the hell do we get to swing our balls around like this in a way where it actually makes a difference in policy and how that's going? And well, first of all, how do we get to do that? And what would we do if someone came in and started, deciding what we were going to do with our land and our states? And it's just so confusing to me. Anyway, Israel would maintain overriding security.
It's a big topic.
I'm always a little murky on how we have that power. I mean, I get it. We have a lot of military power. We have a lot of money. Netanyahu is definitely in bed with our government, right? And there is no, really. I mean, they're
our most favored nation.
Yeah, absolutely. So So before everybody starts pouring in with commentary, well, we have all this power, we have all this weaponry, we have all this money going over there. I get all of that. What it doesn't align with for me is just my own personal sensibilities, is all I'm saying, right? And so when I read these stories, I'm just how does this actually become policy just through a declaration of a president that isn't even the leader in Israel?
Are you asking, or do you want my opinion? Because I can tell you how I think.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
It becomes policy by force.
Okay.
Right? So the narrative that that Israel and the IDF put forward is that Palestine is a group of terrorists. Israel is besieged by these terrorists all the time. Israel must defend itself. Its borders are under attack all the time. And no mention is paid to the fact that Israel is actively encroaching into Palestinian land and building up borders well on Palestinian sides of that land and stealing that land from them. And the retaliation, so what we hear in the U.S. news all the time, it'll go something like this, like, another rocket attack from Palestine on Israel. Israel is very mad and they will build more walls to try to protect themselves. The context is left out that it's like, hey, there was a brokered ceasefire that Israel broke. They broke the ceasefire. Now, when one nation state breaks a ceasefire agreement with another nation state, the state that was just attacked is put in a position of, well, we can't do nothing right? We can't do nothing because then we just invite them to just roll over us. That just says to the world, we're defenseless, come do your thing. So there's usually a rather symbolic sort of tit for tat for that. And then what happens is, oh, they fired a rocket over here, and it, blew up some portion of the wall, and no one was hurt, and there was this symbolic thing. And so now we need to have a massive bombing campaign.
So now we'll do 10 times that.
Right. And so I look at things like the right of return, right? There was this major march in 2018, Palestinian right to return, and in that, peaceful protests, a lot of symbolic throwing of rocks with slings, and the way that Israel characterized it is they're using human shields. Like, peaceful protesters are not human shields.
Right. Please don't look at them like human shields either, right?
Right.
I mean, the moment they start labeling them human shields is the moment they actually start using them like human shields. Not the Palestinians. I'm talking the opposition, right?
So in the course of that protest, you had a few so there are rocks being thrown from the Palestinian side who are not crossing the border. They're coming up to the border, but it is in this no-go zone. You're not allowed to go there. Barbed wire fences, tanks surrounding it. They're firing gas bombs in there. It's not even just gas canisters. That it appeared to be some kind of unidentified chemical nerve agent that was causing people to, that's a war crime in and of itself. It's causing people to lose consciousness. It's deadly if you're exposed to it for too long. And so, all of these major attacks against Israel resulted in a few reports of Israeli soldiers who claimed that they had been scratched or otherwise had some lacerations from thrown rocks, and a few instances of property damage from, they were, using balloons and kites to float over like burning things.
Oh my gosh.
Palestinians were into Israel. And it's like, that's
I
extent of the damage.
Now.
That's all of the damage. The result of that was thousands of Palestinians wounded, and oftentimes resulting in amputations, and hundreds of people killed. Men, women, children, elderly, disabled, journalists, medics, all of these are war crimes. So the thing that you need to understand is Palestine has every right to use live munitions, to use rockets. Why? Because they are an occupied people group, right? They don't have the right to freely travel. There are Israeli military checkpoints even within the borders. Israel controls everything that goes in and out of Palestine, to the point where they only allow a certain amount of foodstuffs into Gaza in particular. It's literally, they call it putting Gaza on a diet, because they don't want too much food in there. They want people to not have enough access to food. Israel has destroyed the desalination plants in Palestine, to the point where there are massive amounts of waterborne illnesses, and there's toxic water. The Palestinians are not allowed to build new structures without the approval of the Israeli government. The Palestinians are not allowed to travel to Israel for medical attention without the approval of the Israeli government, to the point where, this was an interesting statistic, and I'm going to get the numbers a little bit mushy, but I think the global average, if a woman or man is diagnosed with breast cancer, the global survival rate for that, if it's diagnosed in time, is something like 85-ish%, right? The survival rate of that in Palestine is like 30%, right? They're just not allowed to get medical care. And we're going to sit here and say, or the U.S. government and Israel are going to sit here and say that they're the ones that are protecting themselves, that they're the ones that are under siege. That is manipulation. That is gaslighting. That is not telling the truth. That is laying the groundwork and the advocacy for war. So I sat through this hour-long press conference with Netanyahu and Trump, and it is horrible.
Oh, gosh.
It is absolutely, it was horrible. And one of the things that I want to point out in that press conference, for all of the false promises that were delivered and the fact that Palestine was not part of this conversation, they were invited, but they rejected the invitation, and for good reason. You're basically sitting down with a bunch of neo-fascists to, negotiate your demise. No thanks. I do not begrudge them that at all. But one of the things that really irked me is not once but twice during that press conference, Netanyahu referred to geographic regions within the area, not by their actual geographic names, that we use on a map today, but by their biblical names. He referred to it as Judea and Sumeria. Those names, those geographic names, have not been used by rational, sane people in centuries. Centuries. Why would he do that? Well, all of this revolves around Israel trying to get the support of Americans, particularly the evangelical wing of the Republican Party, right? Evangelical Christians. Why evangelical Christians? Why would they care about the use of these biblical names? There is a portion of evangelical Christians that believes in a particular interpretation of Revelation that says that Israel needs to be one country because once Israel is all one country, that is the thing that can trigger the return of Christ and apocalypse. Literally, this is policy being driven by cuckoo apocalyptic nonsense.
Yeah.
All of this is BS. None of that is a real peace deal. All of that is trying to codify into law an extended forever apartheid state in the region and calling it peace.
Well,
it's like tying up someone to a chair and saying, hey, look, now he can't fight. Now we can have peace. And the other person being like, yeah, but I wanted to sit in that chair. Okay, let's murder him, and then you can sit in the chair.
Well, no,
and then
but they turn
peace.
around to the guy in the chair and they say, look at this asshole not taking our deal. See how violent he is. See how little they want peace in that region. Like, they're the bad guy, because that's what's happening now. Is, you know, the propagandists are saying, oh, now look at these Palestinians not wanting peace. Look at how, you know, it's ridiculous, and it's just another opportunity to smear a group of people who have, in my opinion, in more ways than one, been smeared quite enough.
Right, and that whole thing, I mean, it's been going on. So why is it? You know, the question you asked earlier is why is it that America is taking up this charge?
Well, yeah. Well, why? Like, my question really was like, how is that even a possibility? You know, in the world, you know, I don't know. It's very frustrating.
Well, this all started in 1948. All of it started in 1948 because the Palestinian people had been living there. Jewish populations had migrated away from the region a few centuries ago. I mean, like before the Moors, right, in the Spanish Peninsula, and had been living various places in Europe, etc. Didn't really have a home state or home country. And then after World War II, there was this push, really by Britain, to provide a state for Jewish people. And the way they went about doing that was basically attempting a genocide against the Palestinians and forcing them out of their land, and those that survived, they pushed them out, and this became what we call Israel. So the other thing that really bugs me is when you can't sit there and say, we need a Jewish state, we need a place for the Jewish people, and then also call it a democracy. It isn't that. If you're going to make a country for the Jewish people, you are making a theocratic ethno-state. That's what you're arguing for. Like, to the point where Netanyahu says publicly that Arab Israelis are not citizens. That's what he says. And I'm like, okay, how are you then going to turn around and tell me this is a democracy?
Right.
How are you then going to turn around and tell me that you recognize the rights of all citizens and this isn't some neo-fascist theocratic ethno-state?
Right. Yeah, wait, what you're saying, sir, and how you're acting is not aligning. I don't need to go through the rest of this. You guys, it's just a lot of crap.
I'm sorry, I kind of usurped your story there.
No,
I'm sorry, I kind of
it.
soapboxed a minute.
No, you know, because I honestly think I come on here and I express my confusion because I think that there are probably a lot of people who feel the way that I feel. There are a lot of people who, you know, are aware of what's going on and are not aware of what's going on and everything in between. But I think that the people that are paying attention to what's going on look at this and say, well, the same thing that I do, which is like, how do we even have this kind of jurisdiction? That's all. You know, and like I said, I get it. It's all about money. It's all about power. And
well, right, we make a lot of money off of it because the government gives Israel something like $11 million a day that they are only allowed to spend on American military weapons.
Right.
Like, here, buy weapons from us. We'll keep giving you money to do that. It's a way of laundering money through another country so that you can let your military industrial complex pals make money. All of this is a sham, and they've successfully brainwashed
And
the
we get
bulk of the
away
American
with it.
population.
We get away with it.
Right.
What about these other like national organizations, right? You think about organizations like the UN. Like I know they talked about how a lot of what the UN has done has just been very much basically rhetorical show of support, right? Like, where is it? Oh yeah. So when Trump called Jerusalem Israel's capital in 2017. I think it was but Washington can veto any move in the Security Council, and even if Abbas wins support in the General Assembly, it will have little more practical effect than a 2017 vote calling on Trump to drop his recognition of Jerusalem. That secured 128 out of 193 votes in support of the Palestinian argument, but it didn't do shit. It doesn't say it didn't do shit in the report, but yeah.
Well, it's kind of a perfect argument in a post-World War II world, right? We all understand that anti-Semitism against both ethnically Jewish people and religiously Jewish people is indeed a real thing that has real repercussions. There are real anti-Semitic tropes. And those lead to ridiculous things in politics, like what happened in World War II under the Nazis. And please do not mistake any of what I am saying or any of our opinion to say that we're denying that or that we have any, and this is not racist, this is not against any particular religion at all. This is against the actions of a nation state that is obviously and demonstrably oppressing and occupying another people group. I will point out for the umpteenth millionth time that I continue to not understand how it is anti-Semitic to advocate for a Semitic people group. Palestinians are also a Semitic people group. All right, anyway.
To be clear. All right. Yes. Thank you, Paul. You're just,
Sorry to I feel like I stole your story.
No. You didn't steal anything, man.
I feel like I have to make a couple of acknowledgments there. A lot of the information that I got, I was so mad after watching.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch that. Oh my goodness.
I mean, if you want your blood to boil, it's worth it. It'll do that.
I love being enraged every now and again. So
yeah, well, I knew I was going to end up talking about this. And so I wanted to brush up on a couple of tidbits, and I literally rewatched for, I think, the third time, Abby Martin's wonderful documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom, which is all about the March of Return, which I talked about a little bit about here. It is a fantastic documentary. The imagery is stunning. If you've not seen it, watch that movie. There are other documentaries on the same topic. This is the kind of thing that I think a lot of free-thinking Americans are coming around to the idea of, like, have we just been propagandized into this our entire lives? Oh my goodness, this is terrible.
I do think people are coming around to that.
Right.
And again, very confused about how we have this kind of jurisdiction. Right.